Please enjoy my stories or whatever else might be on my mind today. Hi there. Those of you who've watched some of my older videos may recognize this is where I used to sit and tell stories out here by the lake. A couple of videos ago I told you that since I came to my home in Mexico from the RV that my channel would change, and I'm experimenting and struggling and trying to decide where my channel's going. I've gotten several suggestions about sharing my life here, my retired life here in Mexico, and how much it costs, and is it secure, and I put a little bit of those in the last video. I have a few more of those in this video, and some updates on the projects that I've got going. But I wanted to say something else. I have never, in spite of the little intro that says please enjoy my videos and whatever else is on my mind today, I've never really put much of what's on my mind today in my videos. And don't get worried, I'm rather apolitical. I don't give a crap about politics. And I generally keep my beliefs about religion and things to myself. So you're not going to hear any of that. But I do have thoughts that I've decided to share. Like, you know, just pick them up here and there throughout the day. And tell me what you think. I interspersed them in and out of other things going on here. So, as I've said before, enjoy. Yay, my BMW was delivered. So, this is another cost of living in Mexico. The problem with it was that it needed a new lock cylinder for the ignition. And I looked online at several BMW forums, and on the forums it said the dealer estimate was from $550 to $2,100 for that fix. My mechanic just brought it back. He picked it up and he delivered it. He's had it for 10 days. Had to order the part from BMW itself. I don't know what the part cost, but he charged me 1,800 pesos. That's $100. So the van, I've had the, what do you call it, the computer go out of that thing twice. Once was in Prescott, Arizona, when we were collecting insects with my son, and one of the guys with us, we used to charge a battery. We hooked up the battery to the van the wrong way, and it took out the computer. So I got it to Prescott, Arizona, to the Dodge dealer, and the bill was $1,100. And when I drove away, it wasn't charging, and I had to have the alternator replaced also, which the alternator was working before I dropped it off because, well, whatever. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that story. So $1,100 plus back in for a new alternator, because it took the diodes out of the alternator, they said, which, well, never mind. I said that's all I'm going to say about it. So it happened again here in Mexico. The computer that they put in Prescott, Arizona. And this is like, you know, there's 7 or 8 years between these stories. Computer went out here, and I took it to my mechanic, and he called me the next day, and he said, come pick it up. I said, well, how much is it gonna be? He said, I took the computer out and tested it, and it was a 98-cent transistor, which I replaced. Bring me $50. People often ask me, do you worry about the cartels as you're driving up towards the northern border? I say, well, it's a concern, but what really scares the hell out of me is once I cross the border into the United States, doctors and mechanics and lawyers. That's what scares the hell out of me. What's on my mind today? My hair's wet because I was thinking about this in the shower. Stephen Hawking died. I wrote an email to Stephen Hawking one time, probably about, I don't know, 20 years ago. It was an email. We had email 20 years ago. Yeah, sure we did. Anyway, it was about a theory of gravity I had. Back in the 60s, when I was in college, I decided that I would invent an anti-gravity machine. And my reasoning was that if you're going to invent an anti-gravity machine, you'll have to know how gravity works so that you could reverse it. And so I started studying about how does gravity work, and what I learned was that nobody knew how gravity worked. So I came up with my own theory, and I'm not going to tell you what the theory was, unless you beg me. But the email that I got back wasn't actually from Hawking himself, but it was from one of the graduate students that work with him. And what he said was that Richard Feynman had proposed this same theory back in the 1940s. And, well, it made me feel pretty good. My theory wasn't like laughed at, and it wasn't so crazy that somebody else hadn't thought of it. And I'm not suggesting that I'm in the intellectual universe of any of those fellows. And I'm certainly not a mathematician enough to prove or disprove my own theory. But it did make me feel good. And one of my thoughts was, well, gee, you know, if I thought of that in the early 60s, I was only like, 15 or 20 years behind the thinking at the time, if Feynman thought of it in the 40s. Unless, of course, the space-time continuum warped back upon itself. Never mind. That's what I'm thinking about today.
In a comment the other day, somebody asked me about what bird you were hearing. It's a kiskadee. This is the great kiskadee. That's not him you're hearing right now. That's all the other birds.
Let's go see how the wall is coming. Oh, look here, here's a baby bird. Oh, he flew. He's sitting up there. I don't think he's afraid of me. Let's see if we can get a picture of him. Hello. Well, look at you. There you are.
And that's his mother you hear calling, a dove.
So we're in the little bodega, and there's the meeting of the old wall and the new wall. It's got that much done today. And these spaces here, later those get filled up with concrete, and that's the Castilla.
I'm making some progress on my columns. I don't think I showed you before what the base and the capital, the top, are going to look like. I have a mold for this also. Oh, there's the water guy calling me.
¿Cómo se llama?
Francisco.
Usted es Francisco para compañía.
Electroagua.
Ah, está bien. Every week they bring me more water. And every week I give them more money. ¿Entiendo?
Sí.
¿Cuántos para cuatro?
76.
76.
Okay, so I'm editing outside today, and the price of the water was 76 pesos for 4 bottles. We call them garrafons, and they're about 5 gallons. They're 19 liters. So 76, did I say 78 or 76? 76 pesos divided by the exchange rate of 18.6 today equals $4.08 divided by 4 bottles equals $1.02 per garrafon, or per 5 gallons, divided by 5 gallons equals 20 cents. So we're paying 20 cents a gallon for drinking water and cooking. We cook in it, like for cooking spaghetti or boiled potatoes or whatever. We use the bottled water. I do not have a water purification system, and there's a reason for that. The water purification systems they use here are ultraviolet lights, which supposedly kill the organisms in the water that you don't want to drink. My theory, I said this before when I was installing a water filter in my RV, my theory of water filters. Well, this is a different part of my theory of water filters. Water filters, or water purification systems here, and in a lot of places, use ultraviolet light. And what that does is, people think it kills the organisms in the water. And then there are filters that filter out things down to, small microns. I don't remember the numbers. It's like 10 microns in one filter and 5 microns in the next filter until you finally get down to what you want to drink. But the organisms are the real difficult or the real dangerous part of drinking water that isn't purified. They're single cell little animals like amoebas and so on. So what the UV light does is it doesn't actually kill them. It messes up their chromosomes so that they can't reproduce. Well, that sounds good, except my take on that is if you mess up an organism's chromosomes, it means that they can't reproduce what they were. Who knows what they can reproduce or what they turned into? It could be even worse. So that's one thing. And that's ever so slightly facetious, but there's a grain of truth in there. The rest of my reason for not having a purified water system is that the electricity here, it goes off occasionally. It's not a terrible problem that goes on all the time, and you lose electricity, every week or anything, but it does happen occasionally. If they're working on the lines up the street or something, they pull the breakers on the transformers. Or if lightning strikes somewhere, it could blow out a transformer. That happens in the summertime when we have big lightning storms. Or the wind blows real hard and the limbs hit something and it breaks, it blows a circuit breaker on the transformers up on the pole. Anyway, it happens. It happens a lot more here than it does in the United States. Anyway, what happens when the electricity goes off is that the UV lights go off. And if you happen to run the tap in your house, well, unpurified water goes past the light and nothing happens. So if you get one amoeba in your house past the filtration system, how long does it take to have 2 amoebas? 4, 16, 32, 64, 128. And that's a geometric progression. It's actually worse than that. Anyway, the point is that it takes a long, it takes a very short time for you to have a whole colony of those things that you didn't want in your water system in your house. I have Mexican friends who refuse to drink water at the neighbor's house because it makes them sick. And they have a water purification system. The Mexicans drink bottled water, as do we. So that's why I don't have a water purification system. So I'm sitting here thinking about this some more, and it occurred to me to share with you something. I took a lot of college classes that didn't have anything to do with my 2 or 3 majors. And one of them was biology, some biology courses. And we were talking about amoebas dividing and making more in your water system, like, 2, 4, 16, whatever. The reason that cells divide just popped into my mind from 40-some years ago in college. It's a mathematical thing. So, the volume of a cell as it grows is a cubic measure. And the containing membrane, outside skin, it's not skin, but the outside membrane of a cell is a square measure. So as a cell grows, the interior cubes and the outside squares. At some point, it has a choice. It either bursts the outside membrane or it divides. That's why cells divide. That's why one amoeba suddenly becomes 2 amoebas, or one cell in your body becomes another cell in your body, or 2 cells. That's why cells divide. And, well, I was going to say something about God or Mother Nature or whatever your take on all of that subject is. Somebody up there, or down there, or wherever, is a mathematician.